This happened last month. I was 32 and had just moved to the city for a new job as a graphic designer. I always dreamed of living alone, so I was excited, even though I wasn't super experienced at it. The apartment was charming with its creaky floors and faded paint, and I liked that I could walk to nearby cafes. I thought it was perfect, but now I can't stop thinking about what I found. On my second night, as I was settling in for bed, I noticed a worn note taped to my front door. It said, "Don't use the bathroom after midnight." I thought it was just a prank, maybe something the previous tenant left as a joke. I laughed, shrugged it off, and went to sleep. I fell into a deep sleep, curious but completely unbothered. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed. Everything seemed normal. I went to work, met new colleagues, and started sketching some designs. But soon, the oddities began. I was up late working on my laptop when I noticed the bathroom light flickering. My heart raced a little, but I assumed it was a wiring issue. I ignored it and focused on my work. A few days later, I heard faint sounds of running water while I was in the middle of designing something. The sound was coming from the bathroom. I got up to check, but nothing was out of place. The sink and shower were dry. I shrugged it off, convincing myself it was just the old pipes. Then came the feeling of being watched. It happened every time I stepped into the bathroom. I tried to laugh it away. Maybe it was just paranoia from living alone for the first time. I kept ignoring the bathroom after midnight rule, convinced it was just some urban legend. But everything kept piling up. The other night, as I brushed my teeth, the lights flickered again. It was louder this time. A chill ran down my spine. I glanced at the mirror. I thought I saw something move behind me, but when I turned, I was alone. I didn't know why my heart was racing. It was just a trick of the reflections, right? Last night, I went to bed early. I tossed and turned, trying to escape something I couldn't see. Around 12:30 a.m., I woke up. I thought I heard whispers. They were soft and floating just outside my bedroom door. I couldn't figure out where they came from. I wanted to ignore them, but fear kept me in bed. Then I thought, what happens after midnight? Why did I dismiss the note? I walked to the bathroom, its corners feeling darker than usual. I was standing at the door when I heard a crash. I jumped back. My heart pounded. What was happening? Now, I'm not sure if the note was a warning or if my mind is playing tricks on me. I need to know what's going on here. I want answers. I just hope I'm not too late. I can hear the whispers growing louder now, and they sound like my name. I don't know what awaits me beyond the door. I can feel the shadow creeping closer. I hesitated at the bathroom door, my hand hovering over the doorknob. The whispers wrapped around me like cold fingers, urging me to enter. Despite the fear gnawing at my insides, curiosity won out. I turned the knob, and the door creaked open. The bathroom was dim, just like the last few nights, but something felt different this time. The air was thick, almost electric. My heart raced as I stepped inside. The flickering light buzzed above, casting shadows against the cracked tiles. I glanced at the mirror, half expecting to see a warped reflection. Instead, I saw myself, sweaty and wide-eyed. Truly, I was terrified. I took a deep breath, but something caught my eye. The tap was dripping again. No, it wasn't just dripping. It was running, almost as if someone had turned it on. I walked closer, bewildered. The sink was full of water, the surface rippling as if disturbed by unseen movements. "What the hell?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. I leaned over, peering into the murky water. I expected to see just the white basin staring back at me. Instead, I caught fleeting images, shadows darting just beneath the surface. The whispers intensified, turning into frantic murmurs, insisting I listen. My pulse quickened. I straightened, half tempted to turn and flee. But I couldn't. An odd compulsion drew me to the faucet. I reached out, fingers trembling, and turned the handle. The flow of water stopped, and for a moment, silence enveloped me. I thought maybe I was imagining everything. But then, from the corner of my vision, I noticed something moving in the reflection. I spun around. Nothing was there. Just my empty apartment filled with phantom echoes of past fears. I looked back at the sink. The water was gone, as if it had never existed. But there, on the bottom of the basin, was a small note, faded and crumpled. My heart sank. How had I not seen it before? I grabbed the edge of the sink and leaned in closer. I squinted at the messy handwriting. If you hear whispers, don't follow them. They lead to the darkness. A chill coursed through me. That wasn't just some casual warning. I could feel my body tense as I realized that was exactly what I was doing. I had defied the rule, and now it was too late. With a rush of adrenaline, I bolted toward the door. Just as my hand brushed the handle, the lights flickered violently. The bathroom plunged into darkness, and then I heard it. A voice, deep and echoing, filled the space, calling my name. I swung the door open, but I wasn't prepared for what lay beyond. The hallway felt impossibly long and oddly distorted, flickering shadows stretching across the walls. I had to get out. That's when I caught a glimpse of something at the end of the hall. A figure stood there, shrouded in darkness. I couldn't see clearly, but I felt the weight of its gaze on me. And then the door slammed shut behind me, sealing off my escape. I was stuck, trapped in this dark embrace of my new life. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever I had awoken was just getting started. The figure at the end of the hallway shifted slightly, and my breath hitched. It was like a twisted dream, the kind you wake from in a cold sweat, desperate to convince yourself it was just your imagination. I could almost feel the pull of its presence drawing me closer, but I fought against it. I took a shaky step back. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice shaky but louder than before. Silence answered, chilling and unsettling. I strained to hear anything apart from the rushing thud of my heart. Then I remembered the note. If you hear whispers, don't follow them. Hadn't I just broken that rule? With every ounce of willpower, I turned away from the darkness looming ahead. I had to find another way out. I shot a glance behind me at the bathroom door, but it was still firmly shut, the darkness palpable. I moved into the hallway, propelled by sheer instinct. Each step felt heavy against the floor. I reached the staircase, its wooden steps creaking under my weight. The dim light barely penetrated the shadows. I hesitated at the top. Should I go down? The whispering sounds had stopped, but the silence felt just as threatening. I took a deep breath and began to descend slowly. The air grew colder with each step. When I reached the bottom, I noticed a door I had never seen before. It was slightly ajar, an invitation wrapped in mystery. I debated whether to approach. I heard a faint mumbling from the other side, soft enough to be mistaken for distant voices. My heart leaped into my throat. I edged closer, peering through the crack. That's when I saw it. A glimpse of strange objects filling the room. Books stacked haphazardly, jars filled with what looked like murky liquid, and maps plastered with cryptic notes. It was a hidden space, a sanctuary of secrets. Who had been here before? And why had I never noticed it? Compulsion fought against reason. I reached for the doorknob, heart racing, pulse quickening. A warning no longer echoed in my mind. I twisted the handle and pushed the door wide open, stepping inside. The room was musty, filled with a strange energy. Whatever dark presence I felt in the hallway lingered here. I hesitated for a moment, scanning the dim light for signs of danger. On the table in the center, a dusty journal lay open. I felt drawn to it, fingers itching to flip through its pages. What if it told me what happened to those before me? But as I stepped closer, a sudden chill swept over me. Something was moving behind me. I whipped around just in time to see the door slamming shut. Panic surged through me. My breath quickened as I rushed back to the door, but it was sealed tight. I was locked in. There was no way out. Then I heard the whispering again, more intense this time, echoing like a warning bell in my ears. You should have never come here. Panic morphed into desperation. Whatever happened next, I had to find a way to escape before whatever lurked in the dark made itself known. I didn't think I could outsmart the presence now sealing off my exit. There was no way I could trust the whispers, but they were the only thing I could follow. I had to know. What awaited me in the depths of this crumbling room? The shadows loomed around me, thickening to the point where it felt like they were wrapping around my body. My heart raced as I looked back at the table. The journal seemed to glow faintly, beckoning me closer. Against my better judgment, I approached it, drawn in by an invisible force. As I reached for the journal, a shiver coursed through my spine. I opened it to the first page. The writing was erratic, hurried. They hear them. They follow them. Don't let them in. My fingers trembled. The words sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just a diary. It felt like a warning, a testament from someone who had learned too late. I flipped through more pages, each filled with frantic scrawl, drawings of grotesque figures that seemed to twist and writhe. They come at night. They take you. Follow the whispers, and you will vanish. I closed my eyes for a moment, grappling with the weight of the warnings. Who wrote this? What had happened to them? Suddenly, a stronger rush of whispers filled the air, growing louder, merging into a chaotic symphony of voices. Help us. Join us. They were overlapping, their intentions unclear. Desperation clawed at my throat like a choking grasp. I slammed the journal shut, cutting off the noise with a decisive thud. In that moment, the whispers reduced to a faint echo. I could feel the presence looming just behind me, an oppressive force that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I turned quickly, my back pressed against the wall, feeling like I was trapped in a nightmare. The door wouldn't budge, and any chance of escape seemed to be dwindling. I looked around the room, frantically searching for anything that could help. There were jars lining the shelves, many filled with odd things that made my stomach churn. Some filled with strange liquids, others housing bits of what looked like hair. I quickly turned my gaze away, bile rising in my throat. That's when I noticed something else. A small wooden box sitting partially hidden beneath the stack of books. Without thinking, I rushed over and retrieved it. Desperation pushed me forward. I pried it open, the lid creaking ominously. Inside was a collection of small trinkets, a locket, a dried flower, and a tarnished key. My heart raced. Were these last remnants of those who had vanished? And then I saw it. There was a piece of paper folded beneath the trinkets. My fingers trembled as I pulled it out. Scrawled across it in the same erratic handwriting was a final plea. If you must enter, do not lose the key. A heavy sense of dread settled over me. Lose the key? What key? I glanced back at the door, my breath quickening. The whispering surged again, louder now as if urging me to make a choice. To follow them or not. Then, the flickering light overhead suddenly went out, plunging the room into darkness. Panic erupted inside me. I fumbled, feeling the box slip from my hands and crash to the ground. The trinkets scattered across the floor and I gasped. I couldn't let the darkness consume me. I had to escape. Desperately, I began to feel around for the key. I had to find it before I lost the chance to get out. But as the whispers turned into frantic chants, I realized I was no longer just looking for a key. I was racing against time, the shadows closing in. Something strange was happening. It felt like I was being watched, and I wasn't alone anymore. Panic clawed at my chest as I tried to grasp the flickers of memories of those who had come here before. I needed to know what had taken them. But even more so, I needed to find the key before it was too late. My hands shook as I scrambled around on the cold floor, feeling for the key among the trinkets. The whispers intensified, a chaotic blend of urgency and sinister calls. I held my breath, desperate not to lose focus. The key was my only hope. I felt the locket first, its smooth surface sliding through my fingers. I quickly tossed it aside. The dried flower crumbled in my grasp like ash. It was worthless for my escape. Frustration churned within me, and I pressed on, trying to calm the spiraling panic. Where could it be? Then I struck something small and cold. My heart leaped. I grasped it tighter, pulling it from the darkness. It was the key. I held it up, relieved, but that relief was a fleeting illusion. The whispers crescendoed, becoming desperate, as if they sensed my victory. "Join us," they pleaded, echoing through the suffocating dark. I stumbled back, clutching the key in my fist. The shadows flared, and a chill wrapped around me, freezing my breath. And then I felt it. A presence, more than just a feeling. Something brushed past me, a cold draft like fingers trailing over my skin. I pivoted, swinging my flashlight into the inky void. There was nothing, a blank space where I expected to see the wall. A creeping realization that I wasn't alone gnawed at my mind. I backed away, knowing I needed to stay focused. My thoughts raced. Was the key just a means to escape, or was it a means to some other horror? The journal had warned me. If you must enter, what was I really entering? The faint light from my flashlight flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. I couldn't stay in this room. I needed to find an exit, but I hesitated. If I unlocked the door, would I be stepping into safety or into something worse? I glanced toward the door and noticed something strange. Where it once was solid, there now appeared to be a twisting edge, like a ripple in the air. It beckoned me, a portal to the unknown. Before I could think, I could hear the whispers again, tugging at my mind. "Come closer," they lured. I stumbled toward the door, the key clutched tightly in my hand. But as I approached, the shapes in the shadows began to shift, forming vague figures that lurked just beyond the light. The key felt heavy, its weight pinned me down. I stood at the threshold, the darkness pulsating with energy. The choice was clear. I could either unlock the door or forsake my chance to ever leave. Then, just as I made my decision, a figure emerged from the shadows. I froze, heart pounding. It stood there, its features indistinct, but somehow familiar. In a shaky voice, it whispered, "You shouldn't have come here." The whisper shifted, pulling at my consciousness like a thread unraveling. Questions surged in my mind. Who was this? What was happening? The shadows around me swirled with urgency, and I realized the weight of their pull. Do I confront the figure, or do I retreat, clutching the key as my only certainty? Time felt suspended as I weighed my choices. But in that moment, I knew one thing. All the truths I wanted to uncover were just a step away. I took a step back, instinctively trying to make sense of the figure before me. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The outline quivered, and when it didn't respond, panic surged through me. I needed answers, not more questions. The whispers turned more frantic, swirling around me like a tempest. "Turn back," they warned. "Leave this place." The persistent tugging at my mind grew stronger, pulling me toward a dark pit of uncertainty. The figure stepped forward, and for a brief moment its face emerged from the shadows, a visage of a woman with hollow eyes and a ghostly smile. Recognition struck like a jolt. I had seen her in my dreams. She was the one who had haunted me, a warning or a curse. I couldn't tell which. "Why are you here?" I pressed, my heart racing. But she only tilted her head, as if pondering my question. The shadows behind her seemed to ripple, as if they too were about to transform into something alive. I tightened my grip on the key, the metal digging into my palm. "I'm leaving," I said, though my voice faltered. The whispers surged in disapproval, drowning out my thoughts. "You don't belong," they hissed, each syllable echoing off the walls. I thought about running, but my limbs felt weighted. I glanced back at the door, swirling with an unsettling glow. I could still unlock it, escape this nightmare. But what lay beyond? What awaited me in the next room could be just as terrifying. "No," the woman said suddenly, her voice clear but still a whisper. "You need to know." "Know what?" I shot back, frustration boiling over. The darkness seemed to expand in response, filling the space around me with an even more suffocating presence. "Why you came here," she replied softly, making the words feel heavier than they should. It was as if her voice wrapped around me, pulling me into a vortex of chaos. I hesitated, thoughts swirling in my mind. The journal had warned me about this place, yet here I was, teetering on the brink of understanding. Did I truly want to know the truth? Yet it felt like dodging answers would only trap me here longer. But before I could decide, the lights began to flicker violently. With every flicker, I caught glimpses of what was creeping just outside the flashlight's weak glow, faces twisted in agony, expressions frozen in terror. I gasped, chest tightening as I stumbled back against the wall. "Time is running out," the woman warned, her once gentle demeanor shifting to one of urgency. "You must choose now." Suddenly, everything felt unreal. Fear swirled within me as the shadows extended, reaching for my ankles like gnarled fingers. Something deep within me screamed to run, but part of me craved to understand. Before I could think again, I was engulfed in darkness, the key slipping from my fingers and clattering to the floor. "No," I gasped, and I lunged for it, but it was gone. "Where is it?" Then, out of the darkness, a sound rang clear. Someone was approaching, their footsteps echoing sinister promises. My heart raced as I realized I was not alone down here, and the whispers were only the beginning of the nightmare that awaited me. I wanted to scream, but my voice lodged in my throat. I pressed my back against the wall, desperately scanning the dark. The footsteps grew louder, echoing like a heartbeat in the silence. My instincts screamed at me to hide, to blend into the shadows before whatever was approaching found me. I crouched low, pressing myself into the corner, willing myself to become invisible. My mind whirled with questions. Who was it? Why were they here? The whispers became a chaotic chorus, warning me of danger, urging me to escape, but I was frozen, caught between fear and curiosity. The figure emerged from the darkness. It wasn't the woman with the hollow eyes this time. This was a man, tall and gaunt, his features indistinct but menacing. He moved with a deliberate slowness, as if savoring the fear that clung to the air. He paused, and I could almost feel his gaze searching for me. My heart raced at the thought of being found. Suddenly, I remembered the key. I cursed silently for letting it slip from my grasp. In that moment, the door to my escape felt like a distant dream. The man continued forward, his form flickering like a faulty light bulb. Panic surged through me again. I needed to think, to act. Then, without warning, he stopped and tilted his head as if he had heard something. My breath caught. I pressed my palms against my mouth to stifle any noise, and in that moment of frozen terror, the woman's voice echoed in my mind. "You need to know." Know what? It was maddening. I wanted to scream back at her, but I was too paralyzed. Inside my head, the whispers intensified, clawing at my mind. "Hide! Get away!" they screamed. At last, instinct kicked in. In one swift motion, I scooted further into the darkest corner, trying to merge with the shadow. The man took a step closer, and I held my breath. The air felt thick, nearly suffocating. He stood there, peering into the black depths, seeking. I could feel the weight of his gaze, tracing over the jagged edges of my hiding spot. Time elapsed poorly. Each second felt like an eternity. Then, a soft sound broke through the tension. A soft clinking, like metal on metal. It snapped the man's attention away from me. My heart raced again, this time with hope. Was it the key? Had I imagined it? In the flickering dim, I spotted it, a glint of silver poking out from where I had dropped it. But before I could even move a muscle, The man turned back, an abrupt awareness flooding his eyes. My heart sank. "Who's there?" he growled, his voice slicing through the silence. It was deep and jagged, nothing like the whispers. I wanted to bolt, to spring into action, but my feet were glued to the floor. Panic washed over me as I felt his presence move closer, unveiling an unsettling warmth that crawled up my spine. Then I realized I had only a few moments to act. The shadows flickered, and I could already sense the darkness sharpening around me. I had to make a choice: stay and risk capture, or make a desperate dash for the key and the door. And as adrenaline surged, there was no time to waste. I lunged toward the glow, heart pounding as I fought against despair and dread. "I'm not going to let this be it," I whispered to myself, grappling with every ounce of courage I had. But just as I reached for the key, a hand gripped my shoulder, and the world slammed back into darkness. I gasped as the hand tightened on my shoulder. My mind raced. I was supposed to be hidden, safe in the shadows. Why had I let myself reach for the key? I was caught like a rabbit in a snare, and instinct told me to fight, to break free. But fear pinned me down. "Let go of me," I stammered, adrenaline flooding my veins. I twisted violently, but his grip held firm. He didn't respond. All I could sense was the lingering warmth of his presence, closing in like a cage. Suddenly, he yanked me away from my corner, dragging me into the light of the flickering bulb above. My eyes adjusted, and I saw him clearly for the first time. His face was sharp, but it was his eyes that chilled me. They were dark, bottomless, no hint of humanity remaining. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. "What do you want?" He stared at me, his expression blank, before muttering something that I couldn't quite hear. Before I could process, the back of his hand struck my cheek, pain radiating across my face. I stumbled back, stunned. He didn't seem to care about my questions. Instead, he was growing impatient. Then I heard it again, the clinking sound. It echoed through the room, pulling my attention to a rusted door on the far wall. The sound came closer, and with it, something painful and familiar ignited a memory. It was the key. I had dropped it beside that door. Just beyond it lay my chance for escape. "Stop!" I shouted, before I even thought to consider how foolish it was to provoke him. I pushed myself off the wall and rushed toward the door, the adrenaline lending speed to my steps. The man lunged after me, but I was quick. I glanced over my shoulder just in time to see him lose his balance. I didn't stop. I flung open the door, and in a flurry of instinct, dove through, hoping for the best. The room I entered was different. A long, dark hallway flickered with more of those dim lights. I sprinted down it, heart hammering in my chest. I could hear his footsteps pounding behind me, close but not close enough. I glanced back once, and the sight of rage on his face made me push myself harder. Then I saw another door at the end of the hall. Relief surged through me, but two words echoed in my head. "Don't stop." As I reached the door, I realized something. It didn't have a handle. My eyes scanned frantically, but every way I moved was back toward him. He would catch up in seconds. And that's when I caught a glimpse of something glowing faintly on the floor near my feet. I crouched down without thinking. It was the key. What were the odds it would be here? I snatched it up, heart pounding, and turned toward the door again. But before I could reach for it, a hand grabbed my wrist, the same unyielding grip as before. I felt dread flood through me like ice water. I was trapped again, and the only chance I had was slipping through my fingers. "I need to know," he hissed, pulling me closer. "You can't escape until you do." Then the darkness twisted around me, making the ground fall away. I was being dragged down into a place I didn't understand, where shadows became the walls closing in. I felt myself being pulled deeper into the darkness, my body weightless as if I were floating. It was a strange sensation, like being in water but without the coolness. Fear twisted in my stomach. I gasped, trying to cry out, but no sound escaped my lips. I was trapped in silence, the shadows squeezing tighter around me. Suddenly, the darkness seemed to ripple, and I found myself on solid ground again. My heart raced. I blinked, trying to adjust to the dim light surrounding me. I was in a different room, smaller and cold. Gritty concrete walls loomed around me, and an old wooden table sat in the center, littered with odd trinkets, broken clocks, rusty keys, and shattered glass. It reminded me of a forgotten storage room. I looked around, searching for a way out. Panic rose as I realized I was alone again. The man was gone. For now. But I could still hear the echo of his voice. "You can't escape until you do." Whatever that meant, I had to find the answer. I approached the table, my fingers brushing over the objects, feeling their weight. One of them, a small key, similar to the one I'd just found, glinted in the faint light. My heart quickened again. Could it unlock something? My breaths came quick and shallow as I picked it up. Just then, I heard a noise behind me. A low rumble, like the growl of a distant beast. I turned, adrenaline surging through me, and saw a door at the far end of the room was ajar. It hadn't been there before. A chance? Or a trap? With shaky hands, I gripped the key tightly, striding toward the door. I needed to know what lay beyond it. My gut told me it might be dangerous, but the thought of staying here, lost in confusion, was far worse. I pushed the door gently. It creaked open, revealing a narrow passageway. As soon as I stepped through, cold air rushed past me, wrapping around my body. Shadows danced on the walls, flickering in and out of light. I felt a chill down my spine. That's when I saw it. Another figure in the distance, standing still. My blood ran cold. Was it him? I squinted against the dimness, but he hadn't noticed me yet. Part of me screamed to turn back, but the other half urged me forward. I had to see. I crept closer, heartbeat pounding in my ears. My eyes darted like a trapped animal, searching for a way to escape. But the closer I got, the more I felt the weight of the moment pressing in on me. I'd find out who this person was and why they were in the same nightmare. As I stepped closer, I realized this figure was not just anyone. It was a woman, and she seemed familiar. She turned slowly, revealing a face that struck like lightning. It was someone I had known long ago. "Help me," she whispered, but her eyes were full of dread. "Don't let him find you." My heart sank. Who was he? What had I walked into? Before I could even process, darkness surged through the passageway. Panic took over as I turned to flee, but then the door slammed shut behind me, trapping my scream inside. I was not alone anymore, and I was about to discover the true nightmare of this strange place. The darkness closed in around me, suffocating and thick like a heavy fog, creating echoes of hollow laughter and whispered pleas. The woman's fragmented warning floated through my mind, warning me not to let him find me. Panic surged in my chest, and I pressed my back against the cold wall. My breath quickened as I realized I was trapped once again. No way out, no clear direction ahead. "Why are you here?" she repeated, her eyes reflecting fear and urgency. It felt like a question directed not just at me, but at the very fabric of my existence in this twisted reality. Before I could answer, I heard footsteps echoing from somewhere deeper within the shadows, the sound unmistakably slow and deliberate. I couldn't linger here, frozen in fear. But where could I go? Taking a shaky breath, I pushed off the wall, ready to run, but the woman's grip tightened around my wrist. "You don't understand," she said, her voice cracking. "You must know the truth." In that moment, the walls trembled as a deep growl filled the air, almost as if the place was alive and breathing. The darkness shifted, twisting into grotesque shapes that danced just outside the reach of the faint lights overhead. The chill of terror seeped through my bones, clawing at my resolve. "I can't stay here," I gasped, adrenaline fueling my desperation. "You need to help me escape." Escaping isn't what you think, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the din of shadows closing in. You have to confront him to understand. Panic-ridden breaths left me, and for the first time, the gravity of her words sunk in. What was I really running from? Was it merely an entity lurking in the shadows, or was it something deeper? My thoughts spiraled, doubts creeping into the edges of my resolve. Suddenly, a figure burst into the flickering light from another angle. A man, tall and jagged, like the darkness was a part of him. I couldn't see his features, but a sense of dread washed over me, burgeoning with familiarity. I will find you, no matter where you go, he said, his voice a low growl. The woman's grip slackened, and as I looked back at her, her expression was a mixture of pity and something akin to acceptance. This is where it begins. It won't end unless you make it. He can control this place. You can't run forever. But before I could fully comprehend her words, the man lunged toward me, shadows trailing behind him like a dark cloak. I stumbled back, heart racing, adrenaline igniting every nerve. No! I yelled, and instinct drove me to break left and dash toward a narrow passage just beyond the woman. The shadows snapped like tendrils of a serpent, almost reaching for me. But I pushed forward, desperate. The walls appeared to close in, each step echoing the mantra of escape in my mind. Those echoes propelled me into the unknown. I burst through the narrow passage, the air thickening as the growling laughter of the entity enveloped me from behind. I sprinted, each step faster than the last, relying solely on instinct. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stop. Emerging into a larger room, I halted abruptly. The space was cluttered with broken furniture and frayed remnants of lives long lost. It felt heavy, charged with memories. I felt it before I saw it. A door on the far end, slightly open, as if inviting me to run toward its promise of freedom. But memories bled through me, dragging me down. A fleeting glimpse of the woman's face flashed through my mind. You must understand. The weight of that thought held me still for just a moment too long. Suddenly, the shadow energy coiled around me, and the man's voice reverberated through my mind. You can't escape from what's inside. You've opened the door, now let it in. Mouth dry, I glanced back, dread clawing at me as I fought the urge to step towards the ominous heaviness there. But I also felt something shift deep within me, as if a whisper said to confront the darkness instead of running. I clenched my fists, heart racing. I took a step toward the door, my breath hitching in my throat. I'm not afraid of you, I shouted, hoping the challenge would invoke a reaction. In an instant, he was upon me, shadow coiling like smoke. But as I stood strong, I felt the pulse of determination, a flicker of light breaking within. Why do you linger here? He hissed, and for the first time, I could almost see his face breaking through the darkness. The twisted visage softened just enough for me to recognize the familiarity. Because I can face the truth. The shadows recoiled, shrinking away from my resolve. I took another step, then another, and finally, I felt my throat loosen. You don't control me. You don't own this fate. His twisted features contorted, illuminating a moment of shock. In that moment, I knew. The key to my escape rested not just in the mechanics of a door, but in breaching the layers of fear that held me captive. But then, as if the very air twisted around him, the tension cracked, almost pulling back the veil of what this nightmare was. And in that confluence of certainty and the rush of shadows, I realized I was no longer alone. With the weight of those missing, perhaps they were remnants of my own fear, they flickered behind me, shadows from the depths, but now drawn toward the light emerging within me. I turned, moving with renewed purpose toward the door of escape. Whatever the truth was, I needed to confront it, not run, but face this unraveling reality. As I crossed the threshold into the light, I felt the pulse of those before me, a mingling of shadows and echoes, and it forever changed how I saw the world around me. I still think about what waited inside that darkness. Sometimes the shadows call to me, whispering my name in the dead of night. I can't shake the feeling that I've just scratched the surface of something much greater, something I still don't fully understand. Maybe I escaped, but it's clear that the real questions remain, lurking just out of sight, waiting to unravel.